that most of the voters in most of the states want to have a national popular vote for president. We're petitioning their legislators to get that done. So, you know, the truth is why does it survive today? Why does the state-based winner-take-all system survive today? You know, it's because, you know, you're talking to a conservative guy, right? I got the same golf shoes for the last 8 years. I don't like change. I don't like it for change's sake. And change at this level should require time. But, you know, pressure over time, you know, having the conversation with the legislature, the body of government that has the power to fix the system, if indeed they believe it's as broken as I believe and know that it is. You know, we've been able to convince 16 states, 15 states in the District of Columbia with 196 electoral votes to change their state law to have a national popular vote for president through the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. We've also passed one chamber or another in 9 additional states with 88 electoral votes. So direct election of the president would abolish the Electoral College. We say the Electoral College continues to exist. It continues to be an important piece of federalism that allows state to control their own elections, right? But we can have an Electoral College and the national popular vote for president. And increasingly, I think, you know, history is settling this question, right? Are the people to be trusted? You know, I think way back in the day, Madison, you know, clearly defined a republic, you know, as a body of government that derives its power from the people. You know, it's hard to have a preamble that says we the people in order to form a more, right? It's hard to have, and then be afraid of the people. So, you know, at the end of the day, I do believe that this principle of one person, one vote is inherent in American democracy. It takes time for it to migrate across, you know, sort of the entire body of government. But I do believe it is the future of the stability of the American experiment to have a system that elects the president based on that foundational principle. And most American voters, and increasingly most American legislators, you know, sort of agree. You know, the reason I'm a proponent for a national popular vote for president is because I can't think of a single redeeming quality to the current system. The other reason is I'm not afraid of the people. I'm not afraid of my ideas. I think the American people should have the president they elect through a popular vote where every voter in every state is politically relevant. And, you know, I think most people have come to realize that. And it's only a matter of time, to be honest.
So your organization has chosen to work within the constraints of the existing electoral college and go for an interstate compact. Is that your actual preference, or is it because you don't think a constitutional amendment, which is the other route, would be viable?
It's my preferred route. I mean, you happen to be talking to a state power conservative, right? I don't believe the Electoral College is broken. I think the way that states are using it is fundamentally broken. I always say to that question, I don't change a city charter to fill a pothole, right? The power exists within the city charter to fill a pothole. The power exists within the United States Constitution for the legislature to hear the citizens of their state and say that the citizens of my district, the citizens of my state, the citizens of the country that I'm a part of would be better served by a national popular vote for president. And we didn't pursue it this way out of expediency. I don't know how easy or hard you know, a constitutional amendment would be. I just know that there's only one way to have a national popular vote for president in place for the 2024 presidential election, and that is the plan at nationalpopularvote.com. So if you'd like to have a national popular vote for president, if you're tired of battleground states having all the influence with the American president, if you think that the current system is getting dangerous, and if you don't, God, buy a TV. And keep it off as much as you can, but buy one. But at the end of the day, there's only one way to do it, and it's our plan at nationalpopularvote.com. So not about expediency. The power exists within the Constitution for the legislature to make this change. I think the founders in their infinite wisdom, to be honest with you, infinite, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't own everything they say, but at the end of the day, in their wisdom, they said, we're going to leave this power to the body of government that's closest and most sovereign to the people. They believe that the legislature could provide a check on the president through this power. Now it's up to the legislature to say, you know, what's in the best interest of my citizens is to have a national popular vote for president. It's within their grasp, within their power. to do that. So that's why we pursue it this way.
We have a couple of questions already coming in through the chat here. Elizabeth Gray asks you to clarify how the popular vote would be tallied if the electoral vote is the number that counts. And would there be a value in even having a popular vote count if the electoral college vote is what counts?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Elizabeth. The way you would tally a national popular vote for president is the way that you tally it today. In all 50 states in the District of Columbia, they have the simple presidential ballot, right? Nobody's voting for electors anymore. You're either voting for the Republican, the Democrat, the grassroots, the independent, the libertarian candidate. Every state is required. So you vote at the precinct level there in Texas, just like most states. The precincts report to the counties, those vote totals, right? Rapid transmission laws in all 50 states. Those are official results. So precincts report to counties. Counties report to chief election officials in the state, just like they do under the current system. Every chief election official, we just saw this happen, right? Close up, closer than we usually do, but every chief election official issues what's called a certificate of ascertainment, sends it to 5 locations. They're required by federal law to do a canvass, include a canvass in that. Who are the electors that are certified by the state? In the compacting states, it would be the candidate who wins the most popular votes in all 50 states. And then each state is required to report their canvass, which is the popular vote from that state. So the compacting state chief election officials, they add up the popular totals from all 50 states in the District of Columbia. They certify the electors of the candidate who wins the most popular votes in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. Now, the compact does not go into effect until there are 270 electoral votes, right? A majority of the Electoral College, which elects the president. When that triggers, they award those electors in block to the candidate who gets the most popular votes in all 50 states, or the national popular vote winner. They award it to the party of that candidate, right? And what locks in their loyalty is their party hackery. And I don't say that in a pejorative way. I happen to belong to a political party, but they do it through the loyalty to the party. And some states obviously have faithless elector laws.
We have a question from Pat Valls Trellis. He wants to know more about your organization, so maybe it's time to transition to that part of the interview. So how was National Popular Vote as an organization founded, and where did the idea of an interstate compact come from?
Well, there's been a lot of research around electoral college reform and interstate compacts. I mean, I think there was some academic thought behind a national popular vote interstate compact. The person who's put the language together, the 888 words, that is a national popular vote interstate compact. And I should just say that compacts, for those who don't know, they have to pass in every state in similar form and substance, right? So any effort to amend the 888 words is actually an effort to kill the bill. So we oppose all amendments. But the gentleman who drafted and worked with the legal team and brought it to the legislatures is Dr. John Koza. He's our chairman at National Popular Vote. He understood, invented a board game about how do you leverage resources to win presidential campaigns in college. I think he sold like 400 copies of the thing, but it made him an electoral college hobbyist. Then he started Scientific Games, which was the company behind the scratch-off lottery ticket, which is an interstate compact. So we married those two ideas together to write the 888 words that has been passed and vetted in 16 legislative chambers to date. The organization, we were in front of the first legislatures in 2006. There's roughly about 12 of us on the national team, and we get representation in the states where the bill is introduced. And it's basically a lobby and public affairs effort to support the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I've had my shoulder to the wheel on this project since 2007, so I've seen most of the enactments and most of the chamber successes. And one thing I know about National Popular Vote is that we are a organization of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Conservatives, Liberals, and Moderates who simply believe that every voter in every state should be relevant in every presidential election. And I know we're not going to stop until we get it done. And the way that we get it done is for people like the folks who, log into these things to get involved. So happy to give you more information, but that in a nutshell is who we are, what we do.
We have a question from Steve Gerson, which I want to get to in a minute. But first, you mentioned that this is not the only interstate compact that's been considered or passed. Can you explain the mechanism of interstate compacts and what other interstate compacts exist we might be familiar with?
Yeah. I mean, all states are in dozens of these things. You know, up in my neck of the woods, I'm a St. Paul guy, right? Grew up in Milwaukee, so I know a lot about the Great Lakes. You know, what governs the Great Lakes is an interstate compact, right? The states that you know, border the Great Lakes have all agreed to terms of use of those lakes for commercial, economic, and social purposes. You know, and interstate compacts hold that together. Interstate compacts are authorized under Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. States are in dozens of these things. Out in the West, you know, there's the Colorado River Compact that figures out how to provide water. The Port Authority in New York, between New York, New Jersey, and I believe Philly, but it might just be New York and New Jersey. You know, that's an interstate compact. Your state of Texas is in many of these. I think you're a Powerball state. The Powerball is an interstate compact. And it's just the rules that all the states agree to and stipulate. So the national popular vote is an interstate compact that says states who pass the bill agree that when there are 270 electoral votes in the compact, states with a total of 270, those states are going to certify the electors of the candidate who wins the most popular votes in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. Doesn't expand the presidential election to Puerto Rico at Guam. It just says these are the states that can vote for president, right? Whoever wins the most popular votes in all 50 states and the District of Columbia that has 3 electoral votes, right? They will get enough electors to guarantee the presidency. So that's what compacts are. They're enforced by the impairments clause of the Constitution. You know, people talk about legal challenges to compacts. The only challenge there is whether or not they need congressional consent, right? Because the compacts clause says no state shall enter into a compact without the consent of Congress. Current case law based on 10th Amendment courts, conservative courts, said that the 10th Amendment overrules that clause, that the only compacts that require consent are ones that encroach on federal supremacy. So what enforces compacts is the impairments clause. No state has ever been able to withdraw from an interstate compact in the history of our republic without adhering to the terms of the compact, right? So states, once they pass it and they're in it on July 20th, right, they cannot withdraw from it for a 6-month period of time. That's stipulated in the compact. It's what enforces it. And probably more than you needed to know or wanted to know, but at least you know I know.
This is fabulous. So it's not a completely novel legal mechanism. We have a couple of questions. One's anonymous, one's from Steve Gerson, which are getting at the same issue. You've mentioned a couple of times being a conservative in Minnesota. You worked on the Forbes campaign. I think many of us think of the Electoral College, at least since 2000, as being a partisan issue. There have been some simulations suggesting that, at least in the current political alignment, it's favorable to the Republican Party. Do you find it's difficult to get members of your own party to go along with your proposal? And for that matter, why are you working for something that's against your own candidate's interest, many of it, at the federal level?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I don't believe it's against any candidate's interest. I don't think it's against my candidate's interest. And even if it was against my candidate's interest, but in the best interest of the state and the country, I'd be for it. At the end of the day, the idea that this system favors a Democrat or Republican, I find silly, having grown up in American politics. You know, studied a little political science at the University of Minnesota, but learned everything I know about politics in the streets of politics and sort of the policy realm. You know, at the end of the day, anybody who thinks that a Democrat would always win a national popular vote for president, you know, I think is silly. Anybody who points to the current system and outcomes as if it's indicative of what a national popular vote for president would look like, I would just challenge that they know nothing about the American current political system and process. The systemic incentive under the current system is to campaign just to the battleground states. In 2020, 96% of the money that was spent running for president of the United States was spent in just 12 states. The rest of the country was ignored. You know, I think there was some good political thought coming out of Hillsdale College from a guy named Gary Wolfram when he testified in favor of the national popular vote in front of the Michigan legislature. he says, is if you change the system, you change the incentives to campaign. And one of the principal benefits of having a national popular vote for president is it will force the presidents and their campaigns to campaign to the interests of the voters in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Now, if you force the candidates to do that in 2020, I don't know that Joe Biden would have won or lost a national popular vote election. What I do know is that the results would have been very different. Like, I do know that there wouldn't be a 7 million popular vote margin. I do know that there wouldn't be false crises around the American presidency. I do know there wouldn't be near misses. And now you think about it under the current system, Joe Biden wins the race by 7 million popular votes, right? 21,000 voters change their mind in 3 states. We have a different outcome. It's why we're boarding up buildings the day before election, because one team's worried that their candidate's going to lose, the Democrats, under this system. And then after the result, we have another team, now the teams themselves, but people storming the Capitol because they can't live with the result. So, at the end of the day, what we need is we need a system that forces the candidates to campaign to all 50 states. So whether you live in a blue state or a red state or a purple state, you are valued in the system, because you know what? I think we'd all get better at living with the results. And again, I don't know, you and I can have a discussion about whether this is a center right or a center left country, but at least let's have a campaign to all 50 states to try to figure that out. You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the states that are considering the bill. I understand you have a bill coming up in Virginia, and one of our anonymous attendees in the chat wants to know what the prospects are in Texas.
So yeah, we got a bill up in Virginia, and going back to your last question, we've got bills up in all kinds of states, and we've been able to build bipartisan support in lots of states. As a matter of fact, in Oregon, that passed last time. It was Republican senators who provided the winning margin to our bill. Same is true in Delaware and Connecticut. New York, when they joined the compact, it was the Republican Senate that moved before the Democratic House. Michigan, we had a bill introduced in 2018, 2 years after the last divergent election, that had 15 Republicans on it and 10 Democrats on it, right, in the Senate. That's not easy to do on an election reform issue. Virginia, we expect the bill to be heard next week. As I was saying off camera, I never make any projections, nor do I speak for, the senators of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm going to let them decide whether it's time to join or not time to join. They'll figure that out. I'm hopeful that they agree with me that the current system is unsustainable. The truth is, if you vote against the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact today, you own the current system. And I would not want to be a legislator that owns the current system, because I can't figure out how it might be defended. As it relates to Texas, we've had outreach with members of both parties in Texas who are, currently looking at, whether or not a bill ought to be introduced down there. The truth is no state would have more to gain than the state of Texas. Well, every state would have a lot to gain, but I mean, you're talking about a big red state, powerhouse economy. We got 38 electoral votes and growing, 35 and maybe going to 38. I can't remember exactly what you got. But the truth is Texas is totally ignored in presidential elections. Truth is, maybe that won't be the case moving forward, which would probably talk to the majority party in the state. I mean, if Texas becomes a battleground state, we're dangerously close to single party control of presidential elections. And it's not my party. That's not why that's a problem for me. But single party control of presidential elections is a very dangerous idea, right? We need a competitive system. And I believe Texas would have a ton to gain by flipping the current system. And, I'll leave it up to the legislature to determine the timing on that. Texas presents some challenges, right? It's a huge body. And it's an 85 legislative day session every 2 years, right? So it's, you don't go from 0 to 60 on an issue like this, but there's certainly some interest percolating down there, and we'd be willing to help and willing to get our shoulder to the wheel with any sponsors down there or and we have a volunteer organization down there too.
I know it's not your preferred solution, but can you talk a little bit about the history of attempts to get a constitutional amendment for direct election of the president?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of numbers on that. I mean, I'd have to go back to our book, right? And if you really want to get deep into the granular detail, we got a book called Every Vote Equal that, I think sells for $4.99 on Amazon, or if you go to our site, we'll ship you one. But I've heard numbers as high as 700 attempts, right? Like 700 attempts or something like that. What's interesting about it is, a lot of those attempts were like small state Republicans trying to change the current system because big battleground states like New York used to be had so much power under the current system. So I think, constitutional amendments, are attempting to solve the exact same problem we are, which is we shouldn't have two kinds of voters in America with two different influence levels of influence, and that's the thing. I mean, anybody who wants to do electoral college reform or join the national popular vote interstate compact thinking, well, then Hillary Clinton would be president, don't even, I mean, that's not why most of the people do this. Most of the people do this because in every presidential election, American presidents are making promises to battleground state voters and ignoring the rest of us. I mean, like if you're a Mountain West voter, right, and you have an opinion on land use policy, right, I can promise you there's no worse system than the current system to have your voice heard because you live in the Mountain West. Or if you're in New England, right, and you think that Acela corridor is important for your economic development, there's no worse system than the current system because you're totally ignored. Now, you came from Ohio. I supported the Bush administration outside the White House with an organization called Progress for America. We were the primary independent arm out there that was helping with the domestic policy agenda when Ohio was a battleground state that needed to be won. No Child Left Behind, which was the largest federal intrusion in public education in my lifetime, happened. Don't get me wrong, President Bush was an education reformer, but the reason it got done is because minivan driving moms in Hamilton County, Ohio wanted an education president, and they wanted more federal control of education or federal incentives, right? And back then, if a Republican couldn't carry Hamilton County, Ohio with like 54% of the popular vote, he was going to lose the battleground state of Ohio, right? That's how policy gets made by American presidents, okay? And if you don't believe me, ask yourself why Al Gore wasn't talking about CO2 emissions when he was running for president in 2000. It's because he needed to win Western Virginia and he needed to win West Virginia. So a lot of these issues that we talk about as if they're the most important issues in our life. We spent $1 trillion on free drugs for seniors, Medicare Part D to lock in the I-4 corridor of Florida, right? So all of these issues that everybody thinks are really, really, really important, and they probably are, every one of them is touched by the system we use to elect the president. And if you don't like the results, you guys are political scientists, right? But bad systems give you bad results. If you're not happy with the results of policy or the functioning of the federal government in America, why would you defend the current system, right? It's indefensible at some level. So don't get me wrong, not a silver bullet, but you change the system, you change the incentives to govern and campaign, and national popular vote will do that.
A listener named Sergio Plaza has a question, which is, wouldn't it be simpler to just get all states to agree to award their electors in proportion to their own popular vote? Wouldn't that get you to the same place?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't get you to the same place. Second of all, it wouldn't be simpler because, national popular vote has already been adopted by 16 states with 196 electoral votes. We need states with 74 more electoral votes to make every voter in every state politically relevant, whether they want to be or not, right? So, the beauty of reform movements, right, is everybody comes up with their new, ignores the one that can actually get done sometimes, right? In the interest of coming up with a new idea. So Sergio's question, and it's a great question, Sergio, I'm not attacking. It's an excellent question. The beginning of your question pretty much answers it. Wouldn't it be easier to get all 50 states to do something? Well, the answer to that question by definition is no. And you're right to point out that for us to have a proportional system for president, would require all 50 states to wave their magic wand. What I do know in Texas is that bill would be dead on arrival in the Republican legislature because they don't want to give Democrats electoral votes. And I know that it will be dead in California because the Democrats don't want to give Republicans electoral votes. And the reason I know it'll be dead is because those ideas have been killed there over and over and over and over again. Now, the other thing is a proportional system does not sort of force everybody to campaign in all 50 states. I guess I don't know if it would, if you could wave your magic wand and get all 50 states to do it. We could run a campaign and see what happens, but you know, it's not going to happen. That's my quick answer. If a few states do it, you know, it doesn't force anybody to do anything, right? You don't have to campaign to all 50 states because other states would hold on to their state-based winner-take-all law. And then pollsters and strategists like I used to be, I've retired from, you know, the campaign world, but you know, we're going to make a decision. Do I spend, let's just say North Dakota holds onto their state-based winner-take-all law and it's closely divided. Do I spend $10 million winning all 3 of North Dakota's electoral votes? You know, or do I spend the same $10 million, you know, trying to move the ballot enough to pick up 1 elector in Pennsylvania? Because the truth is electors are people and you can't split them in half. They only get 1 vote. So you got rounding mechanisms and all that stuff. But, you know, look, if you want to make every voter in every state relevant in every presidential election, there's only one way to do it. It's a national popular vote for president. If you want a national popular vote for president, there's only one real way to get it done. Now in 2024 or 20, you know, whatever, pick your closest year. There's only one way to do it. And that's the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact.
It's a question from Imelda Speck, which is, are you concerned about the national popular vote creating a different kind of 2-tier system where only urban areas get attention and rural areas are ignored?
Great question. I was, and then I did the research, you know, because I didn't they didn't come to me and say, hey, will you support a national popular vote for president? I said, yeah, where do I get on board? Paul, you're right to identify headwinds. There were headwinds with guys like me when they came to me at 2006. You know, I was like, look, this sounds like the communist plot to gut the Constitution and make Al Gore president. That was my first reaction, right? And then I had them send me their book and I did my research and I was able to apply, you know, my own experience and do a little bit of my own. And one of them was, aren't urban centers going to dominate rural areas in a national popular vote for president? Something I'm not interested in. And what was amazing to me is like the urban areas, like the cities are not as big or as politically monolithic as I think most people think they are, right? I kind of knew that, you know, because I worked in Republican challenger politics and we were carving into Democratic margins in urban areas. I kind of knew they weren't that liberal, but, you know, I did the research on the 100 largest states in the country, the 100 most populous cities in the country. And they represent 1/6 of the population and 1/6 of the vote. They vote roughly 62% Democratic, okay? Almost 4 out of every 10 voters in those big cities vote for the Republican candidate for president. So they're not politically monolithic. And then I went to the US Census in rural America, right? Those who live outside of statistical metropolitan areas, smallest, most rural communities in the country. 1/6 of the population and 1/6 of the voters. That means 2/3 live in, you know, suburbs and exurbs. But, you know, I came to the conclusion they vote 60 to 62% Republican, right? They're not monolithically Republican either. And so, you know, I visited an important principle of mathematics, which is 1/6 equals 1/6. I know that rural voters are totally ignored under the current system. Like the rural states are ignored in the current system, not the rural areas of the battleground states, but, you know, a rural interest in New Hampshire when it was a battleground state is a lot different than a rural issue in North Dakota, right? Like it's just totally different. You know, and at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion the only way to put a rural voter at parity with an urban voter is to have a national popular vote for president. And I think I'm right about that, which is why I came out the other side. Oh, and I should just point out what's weird about those 100 biggest cities, like the 50th biggest city in the country is Arlington, Texas, right? So it's like, you know, once you get down to 100, I mean, some of those cities are actually really fairly conservative. So, they're not as big as you think they are.
Sorry, I had a little trouble with the mute button. Let's talk about what does the end game look like? So suppose you win and get to a critical mass of states. What do you think happens next? Is a state like Massachusetts really going to be willing to appoint their electors to vote for a Republican? Will adherents of the traditional electoral college just accept it? Will there be a lot of sort of slippery gamesmanship where states are changing their rules back and forth, and that's kind of where the next level of campaigning happens?
Well, the beauty of it is, proponents of a national popular vote interstate compact view withdrawal as a feature, not a bug, right? But the beauty of it is any time on July 20th of a presidential year, there are 270 electoral votes in that compact, it will govern the presidential election, right? And yes, the state of Massachusetts will honor its state statute, right? They will so presumably the Democrat wins Massachusetts, the Republican wins the national popular vote. The state of Massachusetts will certify their Republican electors, just like the state of Georgia did what they didn't want to do in this last presidential election in their system, right? Because they follow the law. And if they don't follow the law, there are federal injunctions. The impairments clause gets enforced, right? And so on July 20th of a presidential year, if there are 270 electoral votes, any state can vote to withdraw anytime they want. Their withdrawal can't take effect for a 6-month window. And that includes the nominating convention, right? That includes the general election campaign. It includes election day when the electors are chosen. We just went through all that. Everybody knows how that works. It includes the safe harbor date, where states have to certify their election results, which we just went through. It includes counting the electoral votes in Congress, electing the next president of the United States, the meeting of the Electoral College, and the swearing in of the next president. That's the 6-month window. So indeed, if the national popular vote is in place on July 20th of a presidential year, that is exactly what will happen, because the states who are party to the compact must adhere to that law enforced by the impairments clause, and any effort to withdraw would be summarily dismissed by any federal court, because you have to adhere to the terms of a compact. No state has ever been able to withdraw from a compact without adhering to those terms. Now, do I believe voters will be surprised? No. I think you'll have an entire presidential election where everybody will be talking about, for the first time ever, how much a Democratic candidate wins or loses Alabama is going to be essential and important. And I think you're going to have a campaign where a Republican candidate, no matter how much you win or lose Vermont, it is going to matter for the first time in your life. No more making Vermont get out the phone calls from Vermont into Pennsylvania just because it happens to be. And I think you'll see a reinvigoration of the body politic in a way you've never seen. And it will be essentially a wonderful day for the future of American democracy. And I don't think we'll be boarding up cities. I don't. I think the American voter will say, you know what, finally, we have a system where I'm valued no matter what zip code I live in and what precinct I'm in. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to be good for the result. I think it's going to be good for the country.
We have a question that I want to apologize to the anonymous attendee who asked this. Wants to know more about how your organization works and the sort of volunteer efforts that you enlist beyond just the 12 of you who are more or less permanent.
Oh gosh, yeah, man. If it was just the 12 of us, I wouldn't even be able to be here because you wouldn't invite me, because we'd have accomplished nothing in our lives. Look, we live through the advocacy and effort and time and treasure and talents of our supporters all over the country. Nationalpopularvote.com. If you go there, there are 3 things you can do there, right? One is you can write your legislator, right? We got a write legislator function there. Most important thing you do is write that legislator, because that's where the change happens, whether your state's in the compact or out of the compact. Even if you write them and they're in the compact, it tells them you like the fact that they're in the compact, right? So writing your legislator is always something we encourage everybody to do, and you can do it right at our site. And if you write your legislator, you're going to get emails from us, from updates, talking points, all the stuff that you can use in your community. There's a volunteer function there. Eileen Reevy is our national grassroots coordinator. And she's got a team of volunteers in all 50 states. There are folks from all kinds of states making phone calls right now into Virginia just because the hearing's coming up next week. And so we do a lot of phone banking. We do a lot of text messaging. We do a lot of, coalition building. I do a lot of the communications work. Anybody with a communications background, I try to plug them in based on their expertise, writing and placing op-eds and letters to the editor, stuff like that, having the public sort of dialogue. And then obviously the third way is to donate. We love it when people give us their time, talent, and treasure, or time, talent, or treasure. And a great way to get lined up is at nationalpopularvote.com.
One of the goals of this interview is to acquaint our students and other members of the community with how a nonprofit gets started, becomes influential. Can you talk more about the founding and sort of the other players that were involved, and what actions were sort of crucial to the organization having some early successes?
Well, early on, it was, predating me by about a year and a half. It was sort of the establishment of the foundation of the organization. And I just think, strong organizations at the foundation level become effective advocacy groups. I think it's possible to not be strong at the foundation at the beginning with a very strong idea, but over time you got to get strong at the foundation. So get a good advisory board, which is what John Koza did. If you're in the election reform space, or any space really, having the nonpartisan commitment to build bipartisan support on nonpartisan issues is really important. So our founding board were guys like Jake Garn and Dave Dernberger, who's a friend of mine in Minnesota. Both were, Garn was definitely a Republican, and Dernberger was too, kind of conservative Republicans in the United States Senate, along with, guys like Birch Bayh, and, there was a strong foundational advisory board at the beginning that was nonpartisan in nature. Then do the legal, what I mean? You obviously got to attract some funding. John Koza has been a benefactor, but we have all kinds of funders from all over the country now. I contribute to the organization, but get the right legal in place, especially if you're drafting legislation. Anticipate every problem, sort of be your biggest critic. The reason I can answer every question that's raised here is because we spend most of our time trying to blow holes through our own plan. You know what I mean? And not a single sort of objection rises to the level of preventing the reform, because we've thought through it that way. So having legal involved in that drafting process, and then war gaming out arguments and making sure you have Q. One of the things that we do better than any nonprofit in a space like this that I've ever seen or been a part of is we take Q&A very seriously, right? It's like at our site it's called Myth Fact. I think it could be called Objection Answer. But fundamentally understand that the burden of proof is, on the shoulders of the proponents of reform, right? So you know your stuff, and then don't skimp on the market research piece of it too. Make sure you're working on something that people care about, not just you, because you always got to be able to speak for the many if you're going to be successful at sort of anything like that. So those are just. That's how we started. That's how we continue to do this, build coalitions. National Popular Vote is clearly the brand standard organization for the National Popular Vote, Interstate Compact, but without the League of Women Voters, without Common Cause, without Fair Vote, without the Conservative Party of the state of New York, who supported us there, I can point to a ton of places where we would not be law right now, but for the volunteers, the individuals who care passionately about this reform, and the organizations that we've been able to build coalitions with.
You're a partner in a law firm, and you do this. This is one of your clients. You're involved with the organization. Are there full-time staff at National Popular Vote?
Yeah. So passion project for me, and I just want to be very clear, just because it's important. This Ainsley Shea is not a law firm; we're a strategic communications firm, and a branding and advertising firm, and most of our work is sort of kind of corporate nature and stuff like that. But, yeah, we don't have full-time staff. We have a lot of people who leverage a lot of their time against this project in a contractor relationship. I also happen to be the chairman of the Institute for Research on Presidential Elections, which is a nonprofit that focuses on the history of the Electoral College and reform. So, I'm able to put as much time into this project because I care about it, and I only work on things that I care about. And then because I got a great team doing the rest of our stuff for the rest of our clients. But, yeah, it feels like, I can promise you it's felt like a full-time job for a while, but,
One of our questions has to do with this. May be on your objection and response page, but has to do with the kinds of arguments you run into from opponents, and not just arguments, but what are the interests you think are aligned against this reform?
So arguments we hear, we hear objections raised all the time. I mean, some of the ones that have been brought up here, we usually hear, well, I think the founding fathers got it right. Well, so do we. Some of them are just rooted, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but like small I ignorance. We hear the big city one a lot, and the Electoral College is there to protect us from big cities. Well, what most people don't know is when they created the Electoral College, the biggest city was New York, and it had 15,000 people. The idea that the Electoral College is there to protect small states. Well, hang on a second. The reason we have total number of representatives of Congress in the Electoral College was to get the big states like Virginia to go for the deal. You know what I mean? The small state protection is in the Senate, and the current system isn't even protecting small states. As a matter of fact, they're the group of the most ignored states under the current system. And those small states that sued New York, they sued them over the state-based winner-take-all system, and the court told the small states to pound sand, just like they told Texas to pound sand just a couple weeks ago, because what New York does with their electoral votes is New York's business, not North Dakota's. But the opponents of reform, I don't know. I can't get my head around what their motivation is. I mean, I think they might, some of them try to couch their opposition in philosophy, but you answer every one of those objections, they don't have a philosophical leg to stand on. And so I think most of the time that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, that you end up opposed to national popular vote, you're afraid of one of two things, right? You're afraid of change, or you're afraid of the people. So at the end, when I get through about 15 different objections and they say, well, yeah, but at least, I know the current, the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know, that old, sort of, I'll call it a cop out, you know what I mean? Because that's what I think it is. And then I look at them and say, hey, look, buddy, the devil is the devil, right? If you're concerned about unintended consequences with the national popular vote for president, get on board the national popular vote Interstate Compact, because at least we preserve the state's ability to withdraw and change the system again if all of this stuff you're talking about that isn't going to occur actually occurs. So, at the end of the day, they probably think one system benefits their party or another, and it's like, I don't got time for that in my life. I mean, this current system, all it's delivering is tribalism. I think the only reason people think in terms of red states and blue states right now is because we got to look at CNN's map every 4 years. It's like, pick your candidate. Who do you think's got the best ideas for you, your family, your values, your community? Vote for that candidate. See it go up on the tort board. If that candidate wins, great, go celebrate. If he loses, go celebrate, because at least you did what you could do, and then regroup, reorganize, and get ready to beat them next time. And I just come from this, school of thought, like, politics is a game of line up and beat them. And if you don't beat them, get organized enough to beat them next time if it continues to be important to you. And get pretty good at living with results, because Otherwise, just too many resentments crop up in your life and you're blaming everybody for your own problems at some level.
We have a question. You made the case, I think this was actually before the formal interview, just as we were getting to know each other a little bit, that you think this is the most important issue in American politics. Now, one of the anonymous attendees believes the most important issue is the role of money. Can you explain how those two issues might intersect, or why you think one is more important than the other?
Yeah, well, money in politics, I mean, if that's your problem, right? There are people who, what's the old saying? Money in politics is like water, plug it up here, it's going to show up somewhere else, right? Contribution restrictions, like, I mean, McGovern was able to run for president because he could raise money from, 14 individuals, fund a campaign. You pass campaign finance reform, all of a sudden dark money is a serious problem. You don't know who's influencing the elections for what reason. So you got to be careful. But as it relates to, this issue, I just believe the solution to pollution is dilution, right? Like if you believe that money in politics is pollution, the solution to pollution is dilution. And right now you have a system where 96% of the campaign and the money spent occurred in just 12 states. And so you have a concentration of major amounts of money in these battleground states. 2012, last time you could get like real good numbers on the hard dollars that were spent running for president, because so many of the dollars now go through the parties where you can't track them. But in 2012, there was $178 million spent in the battleground state of Florida. That was more money, right, than 47 other states combined, or 43 other states combined, or whatever. I don't have it right in front of me right now, okay? There were states that had $0 spent in them. So I think the real problem with money in the current system is it's concentrated in the battleground states. You spread out those dollars over all 50 states in the District of Columbia, you'll get higher participation rates because you'll have strong parties, Republican, Democrat, and Independent on the ground, driving turnout, doing the get out the vote. So the solution to pollution, in this case, she believes money, or he, I don't know who it was, but he believes is money. You spread it out, you have a less dominant concentration of money in one state while other states are being ignored. And why do I say you'll have higher participation rates? Because, we know it's true, and we know it's true from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. We know in 2016, turnout was 11 points higher in battleground states than it was flyover states. In 2012, we know it was 16 points higher in battleground states than flyover states. And it's because all of the political resources are concentrated in the battleground states, as opposed to, how much do I, again, a national popular vote for president, how much we win or lose Texas becomes politically relevant to every major party and every serious candidate for president, right? How much you win or lose the little state of Hawaii. 1960, we have a national popular vote for president. Everybody in the lower 48 is going to be making get out the vote phone calls into Hawaii and Alaska. What's wrong with that? Duh, let's do it. It's ridiculous.
1960 is an interesting example because the situation in Alabama in particular was so complicated. There's a case that can be made that Richard Nixon actually won the popular vote that year. So there may be more divergent elections, as you say, than we think in American history. We're nearing the end of our time here. Is there anything that you wanted to say that hasn't been asked in what I think has been a stimulating discussion?
No, I mean, I don't know if there are any more questions. I mean, there are all kinds of things we could talk about, but again, I think so. I mean, if this is the wrap up, if this is it, I just I'll speak for me. I'm not speaking, and I'll speak for the people that I speak for, which are the thousands of state legislators that I've convinced on both sides of the political aisle, or have convinced themselves in my presence, right? I don't feel like I've convinced anybody, and I frankly don't try to, you know what I mean? Like, I give them the information, I ask them the questions, I answer their questions, and they come to their own conclusion. Or the journalists who have covered this issue, or the public policy people who invite us, into your living room, like the LBJ school, or the League of Women Voters and coalition partners that I've worked with since 2007 to do what we've done. You know, this is, it's a moral imperative that we get this project done. The current system we use to elect the president of the United States, and what I continue to believe, and I know this is cliche, right? But I continue to believe is the greatest experiment in government, right? Which is the American experiment in sort of democracy. Like, the moral imperative exists that we coalesce behind the national popular vote interstate compact. And we agree fundamentally that as political leaders, thought leaders, or elected leaders, we have one job, which is to represent the people and not fear the people, right? The government is there to serve its citizens. And at the end of the day, we need a system where one person, one vote is the foundational principle of electing the president of the United States, so that our American president has the legitimacy of all of the American people. And so that we can all do a better job of being citizens who support our candidates and support our presidents, whether we voted for them or not, right, at the end of the day. And I can't think of anything more important that anybody can work on. I understand campaign finance reform. I get ranked choice voting. I get all the different issues that are going on in American politics today. The one systemic reform that touches all of those issues is the method we use for electing the president of the United States. And if we can't have a system where every voter is valued, no matter what state they live in, you know, I think our precious democracy is at stake. I truly do. I don't know that I would have said. I mean, I don't know that I would have said that in 2007. You know what I mean? But I fundamentally believe that today. And you know, we're too good to live with this system. That's I guess that's my parting shot.
Mr. Rosenstiel, I want to thank you for your time. It's been, you've obviously garnered a lot of interest from the community here. This was the most heavily attended colloquium we've had this year, and wish you luck in your endeavors.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to do it any other time.
Thank you very much.
All right.